Now, despite repeated pleas by the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, lynchings in fact continue unabated in India. Now, whether it is related to cow vigilantism or plain simple theft, increasingly people are taking law into their own hands. The Indian politicians are divided over this issue. Many blame the Modi government for not doing enough, for not being tough enough against the lawbreakers. But the fact is that law and order is a state subject and Modi can do little about it. Although remember, the BJP is in 21 states in power. And there are several cow vigilante incidents that have in fact continued to dog BJP. However, in a case that is completely different to that of cow vigilante violence, two young travellers were lynched to death in Assam recently because of locals suspecting them of being child kidnappers. Similarly, lynchings have taken place yesterday when locals caught up with cattle thieves. Almost all violence starts with rumours through social media applications, which leads to instantaneous mobilization of people. And also in Western India, Dalits have found themselves at the hard end as the community is part of leather trade, which involves skinning of dead animals. The lynchings have continued despite public condemnation by all political leaders in India, and it also means that the perpetrators of crime feel emboldened as they know that eventually the state will turn a blind eye to them. All right, now for more on this, we are joined in by our political affairs editor, Kartikeya Sharma. Kartikeya, good afternoon to you. This is a very disturbing trend that is, of course, sweeping across several parts of India. There have been instances that were initially reported, firstly related to cow vigilantism, and then the spread of rumours over social media, especially through WhatsApp, or potential child kidnappers, which has led to the death of two men being beaten to death in Assam.
See, it's a very complex issue, but nonetheless, the lynching as a phenomena has grown tremendously post 2014. Now, whether the lynching is related to cow vigilantism, whether the lynching is related to theft, whether the lynching is patriarchal in nature in the sense that a woman is considered to be a witch in certain tribal sections like in Jharkhand, or if someone is supposed to be a kidnapper, or in the case which you mentioned, Meghalaya, there were two tourists, and the rumors were that they had kidnapped children from a village. And the bottom line here is that social media applications, inability of the state administration to intervene at that point of time to ensure that the violence does not take place, has all pooled in, and it has led to this high lynching incidents in the country. But right, I would say that there is another issue to it. That most of the lynching also reflects societal biases. Right. You know, this is less about state and more about biases within the civil society, because we have to very truthfully interact with what is happening. Right. And what lynching does is that in absence of the state, you think that it's okay with your bias, and you think it is okay with your bias and your point of view of the world to impinge that on the other. So right, the other person becomes an it and the violence becomes a fact. And that is the reason why you find when the cow vigilantism lynching took place in Rajasthan and Gujarat, the hard end of it was faced by Dalits because they are part of the leather business. Absolutely. So sometimes these complex phenomena, interpersonal rivalry also takes place. You know, it assumes a form of lynching. But lynching in itself has increased, and I think it's a shame that, you know, after so many years of independence, that not only so easily people can take law into their own hands, but they can also get away after committing the crime. Absolutely, get away after committing the crime. I'll discuss more on this, but first a point here that you made, an important point that you pointed out, that it was predominantly the Dalits and the Muslims who were at the thick end of the stick who are getting caught in these lynchings. But what happened in Assam was completely different, because these were not Dalits or Muslims, but actually these were young men who had good jobs and they were traveling, and then they were lynched purely on the basis of a rumor that they could be child lifters. You see, if you look at it sociologically, you know, lynching is always around, if we leave the word Muslim and Dalit aside, lynching is always about the outsider. Lynching is always in context of a person who becomes an it. You don't treat that person humanly, then the person becomes an it. For this reason, what happened in Meghalaya, they were not people. They became outsiders. Right. For example, lynching of women in Tamil Nadu, she becomes an outsider. Lynching of a woman in Jharkhand, she becomes a witch. So lynching is always about an outsider, and you know, it's sociologically speaking, it's like the biases of the societies reflect themselves on the street, because it is okay to do so, and you know that the state will not come after you.
Right.
So whether it's one community, whether it is gender, whether it's ethnicity, lynching is a shame, and something needs to be done about it.
Absolutely indeed. Now, perhaps what lynchings have pointed out are the social fault lines, but law and order is something which the government of the day has to look after. Now, you know, a lot of people, of course, turned around and said that, look, the government in power is the one that is responsible. But the fact of the matter is, this government in power at the centre is also in power in 21 states across India. So should the government not own up responsibility for what has happened here?
See, there are two things, you know, the political opponents can blame everything on Prime Minister Modi, but then he's not running the state governments. Law and order is a state subject. It's not his government in Jharkhand, it's his party's government. But again, I would say the larger point here is that lynching has, the episodes of lynching have shot up. You know, if you look at the instance of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Jharkhand, Tamil Nadu, Meghalaya, you'll find people spontaneously crowding around an issue, and it happens so quickly that even the administrations often fails to gauge the importance of the situation. So I think it's a point of reflection not only for the state, but also for the civil society. The question for the state is, it should not be okay for you to take a high moral position and allow your cadre at the middle and the lower levels to indulge in their biases.
You know, Karthikeya, just before I let you go, the issue is an extremely complex one, because a lot of these rumors are spread on social media, especially these WhatsApp forwards on these WhatsApp groups are, you know, the principal reason as to how a crowd is able to assemble so quickly, which results in the lynching of many a times. It is these innocents. How can the government here and the society at large try and contain this malaise of violence?
I think you need to have certain rules on WhatsApp. There are rules which the government has already introduced in terms of group administrator. But the bottom line is that it's like a double-edged sword. You know, it empowers people, the social media, but it also disempowers a lot of people, because, you know, in the deluge of the fake news can actually trample the truth. And, you know, in this double-edged sword, the whole debate then sways around democracy and what the government can control and what the government cannot. So, but ultimately, you know, I wouldn't say that it's also all about self-regulation, but you need to have certain mechanism that the people are accountable, held accountable for spreading fake news.
Absolutely indeed. We'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Karthikeya Sharma, for joining us and getting us the latest update. This, of course, is one of the big problems that India in the year 2018 is facing: fake news leading to lynchings, and the government of the day has to look out that instances where people resort to taking law in their hands do not happen.